Do you believe that a simple plate of food can transform lives? Louise and Helena, a humble couple who cook with their hearts, never imagined that their recipes would take them to a luxurious mansion and a family secret that would change everything. What happens when the past unexpectedly resurfaces, connecting such different worlds? This story will keep you hooked until the last second, revealing that the biggest surprises in life come from the simplest encounters. Stay until the end and find out. Louise and Helena adjusted the stall at the São Miguel market, as they did every morning. The sun had barely risen, but Louise was already complaining. "Are these boxes getting heavier, or am I getting older?" he said, straightening the last pile of dishes. "You are getting older and lazier," Helena replied, handing him a pot full of stew. "Now stop complaining and help me here." As they assembled everything, the aroma of the food began to attract the first customers. Simple but faithful people stopped to taste the homemade dishes that Louise and Helena prepared with so much care. For them, it wasn't just a job. It was a way of keeping the family tradition alive. On the other side of the city, Vittoria was late for an important meeting. His car, shiny and impeccable, suddenly began to smoke. She huffed, frustrated, and pulled over onto a street near the market. "Excellent. As if my day wasn't already complicated enough," Vittoria grumbled, picking up her cell phone to call the mechanic. As he waited, he smelled an irresistible aroma coming from a corner. Without thinking much, he followed the smell to Louise and Helena's tent. She watched for a few seconds as the couple worked in perfect harmony. Helena smiled and chatted with the customers, while Louise, with an already stained apron, stirred the cauldrons. "Excuse me," said Vittoria, approaching. "What do you have here that smells so good?" Helena looked up and gave a warm smile. "We have a little bit of everything, dear. Stew, tamales, rice, and beans. Sit down and try it." "I really wasn't planning to have lunch now," began Vittoria, but was interrupted by Louise. "Whether you planned it or not is another story. But no one leaves here without trying anything," he said, serving a plate of tamales. "So, young lady, are we going or not?" Vittoria laughed, a little surprised by the approach. She sat down and tried a piece. His eyes widened. "This is wonderful. Seriously, where did you learn to cook like that?" Helena shrugged. "We learn in life. Food is our way of telling stories." Vittoria, intrigued, continued to ask questions. Over time, the couple told her about the challenges they faced, their love of cooking, and how the grocery store was all they had. Vittoria was visibly touched. "I have an important event this week, and I need something special. Are you willing to cook for me?" asked Vittoria, unexpectedly. Helena and Louise exchanged looks. "Cooking for rich people? I don't know if we have clothes for that," Louise joked, making Helena elbow him. "Don't worry about it. You just need to do what you know best. Are you okay?" After a moment of hesitation, Helena smiled. "We are in. I just hope you guys have a stove that works better than ours." Vittoria laughed, satisfied. "You're going to love it, I promise." As Vittoria walked away, Louise whispered to Helena, "I think we just walked into something big." Helena sighed, trying to hide her excitement. "Or something complicated. Let's see." The next morning, a luxurious black car parked at the São Miguel market. Louise and Helena were already working, but stopped immediately when the driver got out and approached. "Mr. Luis, Miss Helena," said the man, with a formal tone. "I'm Antonio, Mrs. Vittoria's driver. I came to get them." Luis wiped his hands on his apron, a little hesitant. "So it's really serious, huh? I thought it was a joke." "Luis, stop talking nonsense and pick up the pans," said Helena, nudging him with her elbow. "Mr. Antonio didn't come here for nothing." As the driver helped them load the ingredients into the car, Luis couldn't hide his astonishment. The interior of the vehicle was impeccable, with leather seats and a smell of lavender. Helena sat down carefully, as if afraid of ruining something. "If I had known we were going to be in something like this, I would have put on perfume," said Louise, making Helena laugh. "What you need is a shower," she replied, causing more laughter. The journey was short, but long enough for Louise and Helena to get lost in their thoughts. When the car entered the Jardim Primavera neighborhood, the two were amazed at the imposing mansions. Helena looked at Louise, trying to hide her admiration. "Louise, don't forget to close your mouth. We don't want to embarrass ourselves," she said in a joking tone. "I was just taking a deep breath, woman. I'm not used to rich air," he replied, feigning indignation. When they arrived at Vittoria's mansion, an employee opened the main gate. Helena held Louise's arm tightly when she saw the size of the house. "Louise, I think we entered a palace," Helena whispered. "If it's a palace, do they have a throne in the bathroom?" asked Louise, trying to ease the tension. They were received by Vittoria, who greeted them warmly. "Welcome, I'm so glad you guys came. Let me show you the kitchen." The kitchen was stunning, with modern appliances that looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Louise stood still for a moment, looking at everything with wide eyes. "Is that a stove or Captain Kirk's ship?" he asked, making Helena and Vittoria laugh. "You'll feel at home in no time," said Vittoria, smiling. "Now make yourself comfortable. The event is tomorrow, so today you can prepare." As the two settled down, Helena lightly slapped Louise on the shoulder. "Stop making jokes and focus. We have serious work to do." "Yes, ma'am," Louise replied, raising his hands in surrender, but deep down he was excited. Something told him that this opportunity would be unique. The next day, the mansion's kitchen was full of energy. Louise and Helena started working early, exploring modern utensils and adapting to the environment. Despite never using such sophisticated equipment, they quickly found their rhythm. "Helena, look at this," said Louise, holding an electric mixer. "If I had one of these at home, I would make mashed potatoes in 5 seconds. "And you would still burn the entire kitchen in 3, replied Helena, laughing as she stirred a cauldron full of sauce. The morning was filled with lively conversations as the couple prepared the traditional dishes that Vittoria had requested. The kitchen was filled with the aroma of spices, and the atmosphere seemed more relaxed as time passed. "Do you think these rich people will like our food?" asked Luis as he cut onions with surprising precision. "If they don't like it, that's their problem. I'm not going to change a recipe that's worked for years just because we're in a mansion," Helena replied firmly. When the dishes began to take shape, Vittoria appeared to check the progress. She was enchanted by the aromas and came over to try some. "This is amazing," she said with a genuine smile. "I'm sure your guests will love it." Louise smiled, but couldn't resist a comment. "If they don't love it, at least they'll leave with a full belly." Vittoria laughed and spent a few minutes talking to them, asking about the stories behind each dish. Louise and Helena shared childhood memories, remembering how recipes were passed down from generation to generation in the family. "My grandmother said that good food needs 2 things, seasoning and love," said Helena, while stirring a stew. "So this stew must have a ton of love, because it's perfect," praised Vittoria. In the afternoon, guests began to arrive. Louise and Helena watched discreetly through the kitchen doors as people gathered in the main hall. They saw the waiters serving their dishes, and the first comments began to emerge. "Delicious!" exclaimed one of the guests. "I've never tasted anything like this before." Louise, hearing this, turned to Helena with a satisfied smile. "Looks like our seasoning is working." Helena, despite trying to look serious, couldn't hide her pride. "I said there was no mistake." As the night progressed, the couple began to feel like their hard work was paying off. Louise, who was usually the most skeptical, began to imagine how this opportunity could change their lives. While Louise and Helena watched the guests enjoying their dishes, Vittoria entered the kitchen with an excited smile. "You need to come to the hall. "The guests want to meet you," she said, full of enthusiasm. "Ah, I don't know," replied Louise, scratching his head. "I prefer to stay here. I don't think I have the clothes for that." Helena lightly slapped his arm. "Stop it, Louise. We will, yes. They are praising our food. It's the least we can do." Reluctantly, Louise followed Helena to the main hall. As soon as they entered, the guests' gazes turned to them. The hubbub stopped for a moment, and a well-dressed man with a perfectly trimmed mustache was the first to approach. "Are you responsible for this gastronomic wonder?" he asked, holding up an empty plate. "Well, we just did what we know," said Helena with a modest smile. "So know that what you know how to do is extraordinary. This dish reminded me of my grandmother's cooking. It's comforting, almost magical." Louise, always ready with a witty comment, lightly patted the man on the back. "Remembering your grandmother is good. I think we got it right. But I hope she knew how to cook. Otherwise it's not a compliment, right?" The guests burst into laughter, and even Helena couldn't contain a smile. She tried to hide the slight elbow she gave Louise. "Stop talking nonsense." And as the couple continued to chat with the guests, Helena noticed something that made her stop. His eyes fixed on an old photograph hanging on the hall wall. With cautious steps, she approached, almost as if she were drawn to something beyond her will. "Louise, come here, now," she called, her voice a little louder than usual. "What happened, woman? Everything is fine." Louise approached, noticing Helena's serious expression. She pointed to the black and white photograph. It was an image of a smiling woman surrounded by children. One detail caught his attention, the embroidered scarf the woman was wearing. "Louise, that scarf. It's the same one Donna Clara wore, remember? That lady who helped us at the market all those years ago." Louise's eyes widened when he recognized the woman in the photograph. "Donna Clara. I don't believe it. Was she Vittoria's grandmother?" Before they could say more, Vittoria approached, noticing the couple's commotion. "You are looking at my grandmother's photo. Why? Have you met her?" "Yes," replied Louise with an emotional voice. "She helped us through a very difficult time. She was the one who taught us how to make some of the dishes we serve today." Vittoria was visibly moved. "I always heard stories about how my grandmother helped people at the grocery store, but I never imagined I would have such a close connection with you. It's amazing how fate works." While Louise and Helena shared memories of Donna Clara, the atmosphere in the room became even more welcoming. The guests, intrigued by the story, surrounded the trio, and the night took on an even more special tone. Louise and Helena realized that this wasn't just a night of work. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Vittoria, still moved by the unexpected connection between her grandmother and Louise and Helena, couldn't hide the sparkle in her eyes. She led them back to the kitchen, away from the hubbub of guests, to speak in more privacy. "You have no idea how much this discovery means to me. It's like my grandmother planned this somehow," she said, her voice soft and warm. Helena smiled. "Donna Clara was like that, you know. He always found a way to make people feel special." "But what exactly did she do for you?" asked Vittoria, curious. Louise took the floor, adjusting his apron as if preparing to tell an important story. "It was many years ago when Helena and I were starting out. We didn't even have money for the basic ingredients, but Donna Clara appeared at the market and helped us. She gave us not only food, but also recipes that we carry to this day. Without her, I don't think we would have ever been able to move forward." Vittoria was silent for a moment, clearly touched by the story. So, he took a deep breath and made a proposal that took them both by surprise. "I want you to stay here. I want them to be part of my team, not just as cooks, but as part of my family." Louise's eyes widened. "Stay here, in a house like this. Helena, I think she's joking." "I'm not kidding," Vittoria said firmly. "You brought more than food to this house today. They brought history, love, connection, and that's something I can't let go." Helena looked at Louise. trying to hide a smile of pride. "What do you think, Louise? It feels like we won the lottery." "And, well, if we accept, will you promise that I won't have to use that fancy cutlery?" said Louise, making Vittoria and Helena laugh. "I promise," Vittoria replied, still laughing. "You just need to keep being yourselves." As the night ended, Louise and Helena realized that they were about to begin a new phase in their lives. It was scary, but also exciting. The house, which had once seemed so far from their reality, now felt like a place where they could truly belong. The next morning, as they said goodbye to the employees and packed their things at the market, Louise couldn't help but make one last joke. "Helena, I'm going to miss the market, but I think I'll quickly get used to a kitchen where the stove doesn't shock me." Helena rolled her eyes but smiled. "Louise, you are impossible. Let's go quickly, before Vittoria changes her mind." The two got into the car that would take them back to the mansion. As the vehicle drove away, Helena held Louise's hand. They both knew they were ready for a new journey, together as they always had been.